Hi, I'm Will Bruin, and I was just recognized as a Seattle Sounders legend. Now I get to do voice reads for the Sounder at Heart podcast network.
Here we go. Come on! Hey, O'Shan! Let's go!
The Seattle Sounders have done it! MLS Cup winners! The Sounders rule the region! Seattle Sounders is campeón! All creatures great and small.
Rothrock going to collect it. He does just about. Runs into the advertising awning. Low to our left. Ball goes in. Oh, what a cross! And what a goal!
Where's my copy?
I got a bunch of them in the car. I'll get you some.
You're handing them out for free already.
How many
cost on them?
$50.
I'll Venmo you.
This episode of Nos Arietes is sponsored by Full Pull Wines, a Seattle-based wine retailer and proud sponsor of Nos Arietes since 2011. Full Pull was founded in 2009, is based in Seattle, and is owned and operated by longtime Sounders supporters. They offer the best boutique wines of the world to members of their mailing list, with special focus on their home, the Pacific Northwest. Welcome to another episode of Nos Arietes, part of the Sounder at Heart podcast network, sponsored by Full Pull Wines and our subscribers. We're recording on Monday, May 4th, 2026. That is, yes, May the 4th, for those of you who know. So awful. All right. Anyway, I am your host, Jeremiah Shan, and today I'm joined by Aaron Campo and our engineer, Lickett. Everything seemed to be lining up for the Sounders to continue their best ever start to a season. Facing the league's worst team, they staked themselves to a 1-0 lead in just the second minute against Sporting Kansas City, and were barely letting their opponents touch the ball through 15 minutes. Then, on a seemingly innocuous play out of the back, Christian Roldan failed to see Dejan Joveljic lurking in his blind spot. Joveljic jumped on Roldan's weak back pass and beat Andrew Thomas with his first touch. The Sounders mostly dominated the match from that point forward, but they could not beat our old buddy Stephen Cleveland and had to settle for a tie. Aaron, I assume this is how you feel, but I don't want to presuppose anything. But for me, this was more about a frustrating missed opportunity and less about dropped points per se. Like, I'm not really that mad at the result itself. I'm just mad at the missed opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's more or less accurate. I mean, the dropped points are bad. This is a very bad Sporting Kansas City team. I think that we said on this very show last week that not winning this game would be somewhat embarrassing, and I think that that's true.
We did,
but I think that if the Sounders had dominated this game in a real way and just hadn't been able, the bounces hadn't gone their way, or Steph Cleveland had stood on his head, or whatever it was, that, it wouldn't be as big of a deal, but it didn't really go that way. I mean, the Sounders had a lot of possession. They racked up a lot of shots. I think they edged it in XG by the end of the game. But a lot of that was similar to the way the Sounders have hung on to wins this year on the road, where the Sporting Kansas City, I think, was largely content to let the Sounders have the ball and be comfortable in defense. And the Sounders created a couple good chances after it went to 1-1, but it wasn't like this constant knocking on the door feeling where you really felt like they were unlucky not to get the result. And by the end of it, I mean, the Sounders were under a little bit of pressure themselves at the end of the game. And that's just not what you should expect from this team against the Sporting Kansas City team. The Sporting Kansas City team is really bad. They were giving up 2.5 goals a game at home so far this season. They have looked like a mid-table USL team. And I think that if you had any doubts about the Sounders, or you wanted them to put in a performance that made you feel better about some of the questions, national analysts have had about, some of their underlying numbers, I mean, for me, it kind of felt the opposite, right? I really wanted them to have a statement game, a statement win, where they showed that they were clearly several classes above Sporting Kansas City, and that's just not the way it played out, and that's really frustrating.
I'll quibble a little bit with your assessment. I don't think that the Sounder like I think the XG numbers are maybe a little deceiving in this case because I mean I just watched the game back and I would say the Sounders had 5 or 6 pretty good scoring chances. They had the one that they hit off the crossbar. They had, Jordan Morris was a little unlucky not to score that little exchange he had with Kalani Kosarienzi where it basically grazes Stephen Cleveland's hip, I want to say, and that's potentially a goal. There was the Paul Areola chance where Albert Rusnak blocks it by jumping it, trying to jump out of the way. And there was a few other chances that I'm not gonna say were super high quality chances, but were chances that were decent looks. And I thought the Sounders did an okay job of moving around the box and trying to work quick combinations. And the play in the box I thought was reasonably dynamic. Where it fell apart for me was just their complete inability to do anything in transition, to get out in transition. And I think that's the more frustrating part is that they sort of, even with the play in the box, they were pretty predictable in that Sporting Kansas City essentially went down into a shell and they said, you got to beat us with 11 behind, 11 guys behind the ball essentially. And the Sounders just weren't able to do that. And they needed to be more aggressive, I thought, in the way that they're pressing and in their transition opportunities. I don't know that there was one real chance that they got out in where they had a numbers advantage. And it's their inability to do that stuff that for me is a little bit more frustrating.
Yeah, I think those are the best chances in the game, and I think that this team is at their most dangerous when they're counter pressing and they are getting out ahead in numbers. And I think that you would expect them to be able to do that against the Sporting Kansas City team. You
Yeah,
would expect
that's
them to
fair.
be able to create those situations, right? Like I know that playing on the road in MLS should not be underrated. It's difficult to do. Sporting Kansas City is, it's always been the tough place to play for the Sounders, even when Sporting Kansas City has been a bad team. I think it's worth asking why that is, right? Like, why is this a team that the Sounders continue to struggle with? Because I don't think there's any matchup issues that jump off the table, right? So I think it is worth asking that question because I don't think it's personnel. I think the Sounders are much, much better. But at any rate, it's a road point is never a disaster in the grand scheme of things, even when the team is bad. It was just more the performance. I really wanted to see the Sounders dominate a bad team on the road, and they weren't able to do it. And that's frustrating. I think it's reasonable to have that expectation of the Sounders team
It is.
if they feel like they have supporter shield aspirations. And that's straight up exactly what Brian Schmetzer said after the game. Was, hey, if this team thinks that they can win the supporter shield, they shouldn't be dropping points in games like this. And I got to agree. Sorry.
I don't disagree with any of that. I think that it's fair to be, for those reasons exactly, it's fair to be frustrated. And it does feel like, to me, what it felt like is almost like the first 15 minutes of this game were so easy that the Sounders sort of got lulled into a false sense of security. And, like up until the goal that Sporting Kansas City scores, they weren't really pressing the Sounders. They weren't really doing anything to trouble the Sounders.
Right.
And I would even hesitate to say that Dejan Joveljic was really pressing anyone. He just happened to be sort of loitering in the area, and Roldan does not do a good enough job. And what's frustrating is, of all the players to have this happen to, Christian Roldan is the guy who really should know better. And if it was anyone else, we'd be beating them up. Yamar makes passes like this, Nuhu makes passes like this. And look, the reason that they get beat up for it is because it is sort of a recurring problem.
Right.
And the reason we're not as frustrated, I think, with Christian is that this doesn't happen. He doesn't do this as often.
Yeah.
But it doesn't excuse the time that it did happen. And, he's playing under a microscope. I saw someone suggest, well, they need to give Christian a rest. Man.
No.
Christian just he got a week off last week.
Yeah.
Christian is not tired, I assure you. he is, he's basically playing one game a week for 2 months. He's fine.
Right.
I'm not worried about Christian's fitness. This is not a fatigue issue. I suppose it's possible that he has some brain fog from his concussion. I don't think that's really the case here. I think he just had a good old fashioned brain fart. I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't think he was as aware of his surroundings as he needed to be.
No, I think that that's easily the most plausible explanation. It's it's something. I mean, you make that pass 1,000 times. It's not shocking that one of them is going to go wrong. It's unfortunate that the one player on Sporting Kansas City's team that would be capable of punishing that mistake was the one hanging around there. That's a little annoying, but I'm much less bothered by the mistake than I am the response to the mistake. Right? Like,
Yeah.
what I want to see from the Sounders in that situation is them being pissed off that they allowed a goal like that to happen and coming out and stepping on the opposition's neck. And instead, it seems like it had the opposite effect of rattling them. And I don't want to make a big deal out of one game, right? And it's a game where they got a point at the end of the day. But it's just it took some wind out of the sails, I think, is the biggest thing. Like, I wanted the momentum to keep going into a really tough stretch of games that they've got coming up here. And it's tough. And if they come out and they batter San Diego and they get a win over San Jose, who cares about this game, right? But I think keeping that momentum going into the stretch would have been real nice.
Yeah, and I think that it's worth remembering and it's worth acknowledging that momentum in MLS is fickle. And you never know when one result is going to derail your season. I'm not trying to be alarmist or anything, but I will note that the last time the Sounders started 6-1-1 in a season, they actually won their 9th game, but then they went on like a 7-game or maybe even longer. They went on a long winless streak that didn't completely derail their season, but certainly took them out of the Supporters Shield contention. And my point is that can happen. The Sounders have 3 big games coming up. They're luckily all at home, but they have San Diego, they have San Jose, who looks like a juggernaut themselves, and then they have the LA Galaxy. And I would say anything less than 7 points has to be considered a pretty significant setback. And with this tie, I think 9 points really has to be the goal. And that's, look, I realize we're jumping past win the San Diego game and all the way to win all 3 of them. But that's sort of the reality of a situation like this, is if the Sounders want to be Supporters Shield contenders, they can't just drop points that they should be winning. You're going to drop some points throughout the season, but you got to save those for, I don't know, San Jose at home, for instance.
Right.
Like it would be a lot more convenient if they could have won this game and then you tie San Jose at home and you go, okay, no big deal. We've built up a whole bunch of wiggle room, but now they've given some of that back.
Yeah. And I mean, it is helpful, right, that the other results went the Sounders' way this weekend. San Jose gets a tie. Vancouver lost, I think, right?
No, I think they tied also, but all 7 of the teams that were the top 7 teams in the Supporters Shield standing coming into the weekend all dropped points. Yeah. And, there's worse results than the Sounders had. Miami lost 4-3 after leading 3-0 at home to Orlando City, who is the only other team who's in contention for being worse than Sporting Kansas City. I think unequivocally, Sporting Kansas City has to be considered the worst team now after Orlando got such a nice result. But, just because there's worse teams out there, it's not the worst result of the weekend, I guess is my point. But that's not the standard the Sounders are aspiring to. They're not aspiring to be pretty good. They are, in their own words, saying they want to contend for the Supporters Shield. And in that way, yes, the drop points more than the way that they played are, I suppose, frustrating.
I think too, and this isn't entirely fair, but that's showbiz. If this result happens in August, when the Sounders are 10 points behind Miami or Nashville or whoever for the Supporters Shield,
or 10 points up.
Or 10 points up. Sure. Let's be, it's not a big deal. But with the pace that's being set by San Jose, Vancouver, and Nashville,
Yeah.
like, do I think these teams are all going to be able to keep up this pace all year? Of course not. Like, I don't think San Jose is the best team in MLS history.
Probably not an 80-point team.
Probably not. Probably not. Vancouver, probably not a 75-point team, right?
Right.
Nashville, probably not a 72-point team. But the bar is high this year. I think if you want to be in the Supporter Shield conversation, and if the Sounders drop out of Supporter Shield contention, then I'll stop caring about results like this, right? It's not
Right.
like, because
Yeah.
the Supporter Shield is not the most important trophy to me. It's distantly behind the MLS Cup, fairly distantly behind the Champions League, probably ahead of League's Cup, right? But like third most important trophy by a pretty decent margin. But if they're in the race, I want to win the race. And beyond that, I want the whole regular season to be exciting, because that hasn't really been the case for a while. And in that sense, this is a game that they should have won, and they didn't, and that is frustrating. Whether or not they got help from other teams, because I would rather be 6 points behind San Jose with 2 games in hand than 8 points behind San Jose with 2 games in hand. Like that would feel better.
Yeah, but that's illustrative of the difference, right? Is the Sounders would have been essentially controlling their own destiny if they had. Look, I realize we're talking about week 9, but
Sure,
the Sounders would be in a position where if they win their games in hand, they're tied for the Supporter Shield lead. That would be a nice position to be in. But if anyone is interested, this is how Nashville tied Philadelphia, another bad team on the road.
Philadelphia might actually be as bad as Sporting Kansas City.
That's a fair shout. Fair shout.
They're pretty putrid, but
the Earthquakes tied Toronto on the road, and Toronto again missing a whole bunch of players. I don't think that result is as bad as San Jose as the Sporting Kansas City one, but it's a bad result. Or like I said, Miami blew a 3-0 lead to Orlando City. And then who else is it? LAFC drew San Diego 2-2 after going down 2-0 though, so they're probably pretty happy with that.
Yeah.
And then Vancouver tied the Galaxy 1-1, and I guess that's all the teams that are in contention with the Sounders, but or the top teams. But then Real Salt Lake, a team that the Sounders are battling for playoff position, they beat the Timbers. Minnesota United, another team that's battling the Sounders for position, they beat Columbus Crew. So it wasn't like it was all great results for the Sounders. And look, we don't need to be too wrapped up in a whole bunch of results, but look, again, the Sounders have set this bar for themselves, and to the degree that they are failing to live up to that, it's worth pointing it out. Now, on an individual level, were there any performances that really freaked me out? No, I don't think I was really upset with anyone in particular's play. I thought there was, I think Kalani Kosarienzi, I'll just highlight, he continues to do stuff that gets me excited. He had at least 2 or 3 plays in this game that were among the most dynamic plays the Sounders made on the evening. My favorite one was where he beat a guy off the dribble, sent him to the floor, and then put in a cross that just barely got headed away. But he had the pass to Jordan, which was a slick little pass. Then he had a play where he sort of like took a half volley off his chest and nearly beat Cleveland. I really liked what I saw from Kalani, and I can see why he's continuing to get all these minutes. And I think that's probably says more about what he's doing and less about how great Alex has been at center back. Although Alex had another solid game at center back, I will note that probably the best scoring chance that Sporting Kansas City had after the goal was a play where Alex got 5-holed with a pass, and they ended up forcing Andrew Thomas to make a pretty impressive save after Tyler Calera took a little too long to get the ball out of his feet. If he had hit that first time, I think that would have been big tough to stop. But I was really encouraged by Kalani Kosarienzi. Anyone that you either liked or didn't like from this game?
I thought Andrew Thomas had a couple pretty good saves.
Yeah.
which is not my favorite guy to be highlighting against Sporting Kansas City, but that's that's okay. I thought Jordan looked pretty dangerous. He had that pretty good opportunity. He had a play which elicited the most annoying thing I've ever heard Warren Barton say, which is a bar that
Wow,
is
high bar.
above heaven, is how high that bar is. Where he said Jordan Morris, not a natural striker.
Oh yeah, love that.
Which that guy. He doesn't listen to the show, right? There's no way he listens.
There's no way Warren Barton listens to the show. There's no way.
That's too bad.
I don't think Warren
That's
Barton
too bad
does.
because
I don't think Warren Barton reads or listens to anything about MLS because he seems to just sort of like wing it every time he's on the air.
He is the soccer commentary version of vibe coding. Like he just whatever feels right, he just says it, and he says, and a lot of things feel right because he never shuts up. It's impressive almost, but I thought Jordan looked pretty dangerous. I thought Asaze looked pretty good after he came on. I am ready to not see Danny Musovski start for a time. I would say
it was interesting. I was surprised that not only did Danny Musovski stay in the game instead of like I would have thought that Morris would have been moved to the 9 and got a few minutes there, but he left Musovski in. And then after the game, Brian made a comment about how he really liked the running that Musovski was doing. And I did notice he made a couple sort of like recovery run type of plays, which is not necessarily his game. But I did not think this was a particularly a performance of worthy of him being praised by Brian. I was a little surprised by that. He really is. I mean, we've said this many times. His game is almost entirely predicated on getting into dangerous spots and finishing. And if he's not consistently getting service, he is borderline useless. And I don't mean that in he's a useless player. I just mean he just does not touch the ball enough or do enough off the ball. Aside, he does make some good runs, which has like this gravitational element to it. But when the Sounders aren't getting in transition like they weren't yesterday, the runs like aren't really doing anything for you. And I don't know. I am with you. I don't know how they can justify keeping Musovski starting right now. And that is sort of the problem, right?
I really don't understand why Jordan Morris isn't starting at the 9. I understood it at a certain point in the season. I don't get it. I just don't understand. I like Osaze. He's not as good of a striker as Jordan Morris, and I would rather have Rothrock, Areola, Jesus on the pitch, right? I don't understand. I think what needs to happen.
The reason right now, I think, is that neither Areola or Rusnak were probably 90 minutes or were deemed capable of starting because they. And so I assume that was the main reason. And maybe this is all sort of Brian soft pedaling, is able to sort of let Musovski down easy when he doesn't start next week. And then it all makes more sense, I suppose. But I was definitely surprised that he got as much praise as he did. And again, it wasn't that he was bad necessarily, but I thought Morris was probably the much more dynamic player in the game between the two of them. Yeah. And I will say, I also appreciate that Jesus is continuing to look for his own shot and is looking dangerous. Now he scored last week, and he didn't score this week, but he had, I thought, a couple plays where I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I want to see Jesus do.
Absolutely. He had that really, really nice curler that I think that was probably Cleveland's best save.
Yeah, it was.
Really nice,
I know
really
exactly
nice save, really nice shot. Where that's exactly like he absolutely just created his own shot and did a really good job of doing that. I thought he had a good game. It's funny because it's like, as we talk through the game, I still feel very much the way I did at the end of it, which is frustrated that they weren't able to get the result. But it's kind of like you said earlier, it's hard to single anyone out for too much criticism other than Christian, right? But again, you would hope that the team would have been able to bounce back a little more effectively from that.
I'll tell you, if we're hanging on Christian, we may as well point out he did get a really good look at a header off of a corner kick that
He
he
did.
ends up
Yeah.
putting over the crossbar when he hit it. It wasn't a bad attempt, but it was one of those ones where it would have been like kind of poetic for him to get it because it would have,
Yeah.
definitely made up for his back pass. But
For
yeah,
sure.
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I feel like we're going to see them spamming that far post corner to Christian a lot for the
Yeah.
next few weeks. So hopefully it comes off again, because I think we're going to be seeing a lot of that play.
Yeah, I do too. So the other, and then who's the other one that the other question I was going to ask you was, at the end of the game, we saw Hassani Dotson and Peter Kingston come in late. And I think that was one where a lot of folks were asking, why are we making defensive subs? Maybe I even saw you suggest
did.
that.
Yeah.
And Brian, after the game, said it was more about just getting some energy on the field, and they didn't have a lot of great options offensively off the bench at that point. And to me, it's just more interesting that Peter Kingston continues to get as much run as he's getting. And I really do like him. I think I don't know if either one of them were super involved over the last 10 minutes or whatever that they got on the field. But I didn't mind that one as much, because I at least understood sort of what Brian was trying to do.
I guess I say this as somebody who was supportive of the Georgie Munungu trade.
Yeah.
And still think it was a good deal.
This is a game where you miss him, though.
This is a game where you miss him. Yeah, if you're bringing on Hassani Dotson and Peter Kingston, players who I like, I don't have any problem with either of these guys at all.
I think
but
that's fair.
there are also guys in the organization on the roster that did not make this 18 that could have provided a more attacking threat. And
I mean, Yu Sukunome and Sebastian Gomez, I would think, would be the two obvious candidates, right?
And in a game like this, I think I would rather see Yu Sukunome than Hassani Dotson. If and maybe you don't make the decision to maybe Yu Sukunome should be making the bench over Cody Baker in a game like this, right? Or I don't know. And this is the worst kind of Monday morning quarterbacking, and I'm aware of that.
We're talking about the 20th player on the bench.
But it is like, we have these young attacking players that just don't get any minutes, and this is a game where, hey, this team sucks. Go show me what you can do against this team that sucks, because we need a goal. It would have been a nice option, I think, to have.
I mean, I guess I think I told someone this on the website, and so I guess I should at least back this up, where if you're worrying too much about the 20th player, the mistakes have already been made. But I do think you make a valid point, and this user probably made a valid point too, when they said, why not have Yu Sukunome available in this game? He hasn't been getting any run. Even Sebastian Gomez, frankly. I mean, he is a player, if you watch the Tacoma Defiance game, and by the way, they drew Sporting Kansas City 2-2 in a very sort of annoying performance, because they had a bunch of first teamers on the roster, and most of them played fine, but whatever. I'm not going to get into Tacoma Defiance right now. But Yu Sukunome, had a couple, had one particularly good look that could have won the game for him, and he didn't finish it. But I am with you. I do think that this is a game where you miss Georgie Munungu a lot. Now, can you justify keeping Georgie for this one game like this? That's the problem, right? You needed to be getting him more minutes. But it's still fair to point out that this is why the Sounders should do something need to do something in the summers, because they have there are holes like this that they should be filling. Like, the Sounders are an organization where you should be able to bring in a high quality attacker off the bench. I mean, I don't think that's crazy to be asking for them to do this. They're the kind of team that should have starting caliber players coming off the bench every single game. And yes, even if they're the fourth or fifth sub.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And they have the resources to make that happen. And there's part of me that hopes the reason players like Kingston are getting so many minutes right now is because Brian wants to give them every opportunity to to get minutes before the
Right.
summer window.
That could be.
I hope that that's the case. I think, and I know we talked about the Jordan thing, and I think you're probably right that this is just trying to get through what is hopefully the tail end of this specific injury crisis. But if Brian wants Jordan on the wing and he thinks that that's his best position, I think they've got to get a striker in the summer window.
Right.
You know, it doesn't have to be a DP because it can't be a DP almost certainly. But I like Asase de Rosario. I don't think he's ready to be a starter on a championship caliber team. I don't think Danny Musovski is ready is that guy either. And I think that some competition there, if nothing else, would be good. So now I would rather see Jordan there and you know, maybe get another attacking midfielder or something like that, or more true winger, quote unquote. But it is something that has to be on the table if Brian wants to see Jordan over on the wing.
Right. And I think that's another great point, is that the Sounders have some flexibility coming into this summer, and they can't do anything about it right now. And it's not really worth getting into a huge debate about whether or not they should have moved Georgie Manungu when they did. But it does just sort of underscore that there's room to improve this roster. And I know you and I have said on this very show that, you know, they need to, that this is a good, that they have a pretty stacked roster, but you should make it more stacked. You should be, you know, you should,
Right.
when you're chasing a goal, you should be able to bring in a more potent attacking threat than Hassani Dotson or Peter Kingston. Always. You always should be able to bring in a more potent threat than either of those two guys. And that's not to slag either one of Dotson or Kingston. I think they're both very good players who I have no problem even starting a fair number of games. They're just not the guy I want to be bringing off the bench when I need a goal. I think that's a pretty fair statement.
Yeah, I think that is the fair statement that you're going to make, frankly. And I think the nice thing about the summer window is that there are players who aren't going to necessarily feel the need to start, who are going to raise, you know, the floor of the team coming in off the bench, potentially starting, I guess, who are going to be available on free transfers, who, you know, maybe you can spend some of that GAM on. I think a better version of a Ryan Kent type player is the kind of player that they should be looking for. And that's not to throw shade on Ryan Kent, but just like somebody who's going to be able to make a more immediate impact. You know, I think those guys are out there. Like, I'm not asking you to go find Denny Mwanga, although that would be nice, you know, but that there are players of that profile who, you know, are worth taking a risk on.
I mean, look, the reality was last year they were able to bring Georgie Manungu and Ryan Kent off the bench in situations like this. I don't think it's too much to ask that they get back to that point. And that's what the remit should be this summer. There should be no excuse making of, well, we shot for the moon and we didn't hit it. Like, no, get me, like, let's have two, let's target two guys that one of them we know we can sign. The other one could be our moonshot, you know? The summer window has to be active, and hopefully they go into, you know, there is a very plausible world where they go into the summer flying even after this result. But they gotta take care of business now in these upcoming home games, and then of course the road game against LAFC. But I think that's about all I have to say about this game. You know, I would like to talk to you a little bit about the World Cup. We had a nice little conversation about the World Cup before we started recording, and I want to get you on the record a little bit with that, because this is a big thing that's happening pretty soon. And if you want to stick around and hear us talk about the World Cup, we'll do that after the break. But you're listening to Nos Audietes on the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network. Sounder at Heart has been around in one form or another since 2009. In 2026, though, we make a pretty significant evolution when we go analog. Yes, that's right. In the year of our Lord 2026, we are publishing a real-life magazine. We're calling this thing 4, as in Sounder at Heart 4.0, but we're stylizing it as IV because we absolutely love Roman numeral. And if you want to refer to it as IV, that's cool too. The first issue has a comic book style cover that was hand-drawn by local artist Kevin Newber. Features Features by Tim Foss, Susie Rance, and Charlie Boehm, a statistical deep dive by Kat Bush, a Q&A with Brian Schmetzer, a column by G. Willow Wilson, and photographs by Noah Reif, Max Aquino, Mike Russell, and Jane Dershowitz. I could not possibly be more proud of the work everyone put into making this, and I think you're going to absolutely love it. If you'd like to get your hands on one of these limited edition copies, we're currently selling them for $15 on our website. Get yours now. Nos Odietes, admittedly, is not exactly known for our spicy takes, but that doesn't mean we want our food to be mild. Spice up your life with Hacks and Ferments. Handcrafted in Georgetown and made with the best local ingredients from across the Pacific Northwest, they specialize in unique small batch fermented hot sauces and vinegars. Hacks and Ferments brings bold flavors and natural fermentation together for something truly special. Whether you're a heat seeker or just looking to elevate your cooking, you'll find something you love at hacksandferments.com. That's HAXANFERMENTS.com. And right now, if you use the code SOUNDERATHEART, that's all one word, at checkout, you will get a free hot sauce with your order. Again, go to hacksandferments.com, use the code SOUNDERATHEART at checkout for a free hot sauce with your order. Hacks and Ferments is a proud sponsor of the Sounder at Heart podcast network. Welcome back to Nos Odietes on the Sounder at Heart podcast network. All right, so the World Cup now is, I don't know, 5 weeks away. Is that right?
Something like that.
Yeah. 5 weeks away. And we should be, it's funny to think about this. I actually just wrote the editor's note for the Sounder at Heart magazine, which will be focused on the World Cup. And so it seems kind of funny to be talking about the World Cup like this when we have a magazine devoted to it. But sort of the premise of my thing was 4 years ago when we found out that Seattle was going to be a host city in the World Cup, we were over the moon. I mean, we were very, very excited about this. It was sort of a dream. It was a pinch myself kind of moment that the World Cup was going to be coming to a city where I live, where I have a significant place in the soccer mediascape, I suppose you can say. And it was pretty exciting. And then when we found out the United States was going to be playing a game there, and it's like, oh my God, this is a huge opportunity for us. And it was really exciting. And it's just amazing how over the last year or so, FIFA and the US government has and I suppose the US national team to a degree too, have just squeezed all the joy and excitement out of the buildup into this thing. And there's part of me that still thinks once the games are here, I'll find a way to enjoy it. But there's no way it's going to live up to the expectations I had 4 years ago.
No, I don't think so. I mean, that's true of a lot of things. How I felt about them 4 years ago, but that's
fair
neither
point.
here nor there, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I think that the naked corruption and cozying up to strongman dictator types that FIFA has done over the last 6 months, the just complete tone deafness, trying to force the representative of the Palestinian FA to smile and shake hands with the just, no matter what you think about that specific issue, like, come on, like, why would you think that was a good idea? Do you have any concept of what is happening in the world right now? No, because you don't. Gianni Infantino doesn't live in the same planet as everybody else. He lives in the same planet as Saudi royal family and Donald Trump and all these guys, and that's just become very obvious. And the amount of just trying to bleed everyone dry for the last cent left in their wallets during a time when the economy is in the toilet. People are very scared about the future, cutting back on discretionary spending, and then you can buy $40,000 worth of World Cup tickets at Costco if you want, without airfare, or lodging or anything, just tickets to the game. I mean, I'm not naive. Like, I know sports is this way, and to varying degrees has been for a very long time.
This is sort of, Infantino has sort of said that, and as sort of a defense, it's like, look, sports are expensive, especially in the United States, and Taylor Swift concerts are expensive too. And it's like, yeah, but not like this. Like they
No.
just aren't. Like one of the
No.
lines that got repeated a lot during the run up to the World Cup, back in 2022 was, is this going to be like hosting 6 Super Bowls? And I think at the time they meant it like the worldwide audience will be equivalent to 6 Super Bowls, but somehow that morphed into, it's like hosting 6 Super Bowl. Like you have to be prepared to pay Super Bowl prices to go to any of these games. And look, the reality is that going to the Super Bowl is not as expensive as going to these group stage games, let alone the equivalent of the Super Bowl, which would be a World Cup final by the way. Like it's just not, this is not on, there is no equivalent to what we're seeing right now in terms of the price gouging.
The only tickets I could have plausibly, not even justified because I couldn't justify it, but plausibly have had the money to pay for were to a game featuring arguably the worst team in a tournament and the team of a country the United States is currently at war. And that was like, those tickets were absurd, and I just, and that's a whole other thing, like forcing Iran to come play in the US during all this. It's just disgusting. It's so gross, and it is so indicative of the way the elites around the world view normal people as just, a means to make as much money as possible off of, and don't view anything that's happening in the world with like any actual seriousness. And honestly, like looking at the amount of tickets that are on the secondary market, like looking at some of the stuff that they're kind of having to try to do now, where, wow, it's crazy. These tickets keep opening up. Isn't that interesting? Like people are not going to travel for this World Cup the way they have in the past. There is not a built-in audience in the US to support this kind of price gouging, I don't think. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if like we saw some non-sold out stadiums in Qatar in 2023, I guess it was technically. And in 2018 as well. I mean, they weren't able to sell all the seats for some of the games, which is just diabolical. Like it's the most watched, most popular sporting event in the world, and you are so concerned with maximizing profits that you can't make it affordable enough to sell out the whole stadium. It's just, it's shocking. So it's a bummer, man. I'm like you. I'm sure that by the time the games get here, I'll probably be a little less cynical about the whole thing. But like if you had told me 4 years ago, oh yeah, you won't be going to any games, you'll actually be traveling while it's happening for one of the weekends, the weekend of the US game, in fact, you probably won't even go to hang out like in the fan zone or anything like that because you're just so I would have said, oh shit, I guess maybe I shouldn't be so optimistic about the future because it sounds like things have gotten pretty bad. And yeah, that's that's where we're at. And like my hope is that maybe this will teach FIFA a little bit of humility. But I would
have thought the Club World Cup would have done that too. But
you would have thought so. And the way the Olympics have gone, right, where like nobody wants the Olympics anymore because the IOC has gotten so greedy to the point that they're having to have them in like Adelaide now, right? No shade to Adelaide, but maybe not as marquee of a city as we've seen in the past. And they're not changing anything they're doing, and I don't suspect FIFA will either. So depressing. I've heard that it's less so in Canada and Mexico from folks that I've talked to, that it's it's a little less, but it's still very price gougey, obviously. But maybe some of the other things surrounding the whole tournament are a little less fraught. But yeah, it's really depressing. And it's looking like the World Cup has been like a bucket list thing for me for a very long time. And if I can't even be asked to go to games 30 miles from my house, I don't know what that says about the likelihood of me going to one ever in the future. So It's a bummer.
I will say I'm still holding out, and I should also add that my letter to the editor. It's not a letter to the editor. It's a note from the editor. It does end on a vaguely positive note, which is I do think there's a chance that once this is here, that it will feel less gross because we will be in it, and it will, we might not feel great when we wake up in the morning, but there's going to be an element of, well, I'm glad that I did this thing. And especially if prices come down, and I am looking forward to seeing people, and, like we're planning on a big watch party the day of the US Australia game. And a lot of people apparently are planning on being here without necessarily going to the game itself. So that might be kind of interesting. And, I still think I will probably take my kids out to some fan fests. It's hard for me to imagine going to games unless tickets, like right now, I think the cheapest tickets that you can buy to any of the Seattle games is $250. And that's to sit like in the corner of the third deck to see two teams that I don't really have that much interest in seeing. And my suspicion is that those tickets will invariably have to come down. Like there's just no one's buying them at that price. So, hopefully that happens. Maybe I'll end up going to a game. I do have some hope that this could not be as bad as it is, but it just bums me out that, here we are 5 weeks before the games start and we're having such a negative conversation about this. And it's all stuff that's in the people in power's control. Like none of this is because of unforeseen circumstances. These are all man-made errors. The pricing, the warmongering, the stupid statements, that you just go on a long, long list of things that are wrong with this. And they're all the result of people making stupid decisions. And that's what bums me out.
Yeah. I think that we have this habit in our current political and economic moment of accepting the framing that powerful people like to put around things like this of like, well, this is just an inevitability. I mean, this is just how this works. And it doesn't have to work. Like, I remember a time when the Super Bowl was not the way it is now. I remember a time when, like, the World Cup was here when I was 11 years old, and it wasn't like this. It wasn't in Seattle, obviously, but it wasn't like this. It was a big event. There was lots of marketing, blah, 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 but it was not this.
Right.
College football has not always been like this. Like, none of this stuff has to be shitty. It is, like you said, conscious decisions by people in power doing things that nobody but them likes so they can make more money. And like, what are you going to do? Right. I'm still going to watch the games. So I guess I'm complicit, but you can at least hate these people, right? At the very
you can
least.
hate these people and you don't have to pay. And, I'm not going to tell anyone not to go to these games. I'm just saying, I think you're justified. I think more what I'm saying is if almost everyone I've talked to feels the same way. So I don't feel like I guess I'm just giving people the comfort of knowing that a lot of people feel this way, that, I know a few people that have bought tickets and they are like sheepishly admitting that they bought tickets and they want to go to this historic event, and God bless them. And I hope they have a great time. But I do not blame anyone for saying like, look, I'm drawing a line in the sand. Either I'm not going or I'm waiting until these prices come way down. And, hopefully that's what, hopefully a message gets sent. I still think that Seattle at the end of this tournament is going to end up being even more like people are going to appreciate the beauty of Seattle, I think, a lot more than they do now. Like Seattle is still a unbelievably beautiful city on its day. And if we get good weather during this tournament, it's going to blow people away.
And maybe with the transformation that's gone, through in the last few years, especially on the waterfront, like maybe even more beautiful than it's ever been. Right. So, that's a silver lining. That's a nice silver lining that we can share this city with the world.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, on that really positive note, why don't we get out of here? I want to say thank you to our sponsor, Full Pool Wines. And of course, thank you to our subscribers. I'll give you I'll make another plug that if you want to support Sounder at Heart's efforts, and read some interesting stories that are not all about, like, frankly, they're mostly about what could have been and some of the other amazing stuff that's going on in the region. I would urge you to pick up For the Sounder at Heart magazine. We'll have a World Cup issue. We are currently taking pre-orders. They are now $15. Although if you are if you're a subscriber at the supporter level or above, you can get a $5 discount. So that makes it $10. Just hit me up if you are such a person and you didn't get an email about it. But I guess I should just send that email out. Anyway, let's get out of here. I'm Jeremiah Shan, signing off for Aaron Campo and Lickett. This is Nos Audietes, part of the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network. And remember, you'll never get alone.
Let's go, Sounders.